If needlework is your passion, whether you're stitching by hand, machine, or mixing it all up, you're going to want to hear about the Mr. X Stitch Contemporary Needlework Prize 2025. This prize celebrates the best in modern stitch, and it's open to creatives from all around the world, whether you're a student or an emerging artist or a seasoned professional. And the best part, you don't have to send your work anywhere. Just upload high-resolution images to a private folder we will send you after you enter. You can enter more than one category, for instance, hand embroidery and 3D textiles. Just grab an entry for each one. And if you've got a student ID, you can get 50% off the entry price as well. The deadline for entering is 30th of June 2025, and entries are now open at xstitchmag.com/prize-entry. Thanks to our brilliant sponsors, Bookmarked Hub by Search Press and David and Charles, and the legends at Lowry Workstands. If you've got the stitch bug, this is your time. Show us what you've got. Enter the prize now. Visit xstitchmag.com/prize-entry to get your ticket today. Michelle Kingdom is a Californian needlework artist whose embroidered vignettes are effortlessly beautiful and yet subtly dark. Each of her pieces projects a scene where there's a story being told, with shades of light and dark, and yet it's up to you to discern what the story truly is. This is the first part of the Needle Exchange with Michelle, and it's been a long time coming. I've been a fan of her work ever since she popped onto the scene, and I've had the pleasure of writing about her for Fibre Arts Now magazine. But this was the first time we actually got to have a proper chat, and what an absolute pleasure it was. Michelle, she just presents a body of work, and when you see it, you know that it's Michelle Kingdom artwork. Anybody who's been paying attention to embroidery for the last 10 years or so will know Michelle's work when you see it. It has a classic style about it, yet a modern twist that makes it very contemporary and at the same time gives you a sense of nostalgia. Her use of materials, her colour choices, and yet her storytelling flips between light and dark with nimble pleasure and equal measure. As I say, this is the first part of our exchange, and we take a bit of a deep dive into Michelle's work, how she does what she does. I really just geek out asking her the kind of questions I've wanted to for the best part of 10 years, so hopefully you will enjoy the show. We'll be back next week with the second part of the conversation, as always. And if you have enjoyed the show, if you'd like to share it with one other person who you think would admire Michelle's work, then please do. I hope you're well. I'll be back next week. Enjoy the show. I'm going to start with a quote. Sometimes I like to start with quotes.
Are we on right now?
Yeah. We're recording.
Hey.
You can say what you like, and I can always edit it out.
Before you start, can I say one thing to you, Jamie?
Yes.
I just want to say thank you so much, because you have been a constant supporter of my work, and I think you were one of the first people that published an article, you and Alyssa. I was just looking at it before I came on with you, from like 10 years ago. Back when I was just like, I'm just gonna put this stuff on the Flickr. Let's see if anybody looks at it.
Jesus, they were nice times, weren't they, on the Flickr? No, it's been a pleasure. I was thinking back, I was reflecting back and thinking along the similar lines and just being like, wow, we've actually known of each other for a long time. And when I do these interviews, I spin back through people's Instagrams to see kind of how far back they go. And I was like, I remember that one. This is like 2014 was when you first sort of came out of the woodwork, right?
Yeah.
Around that sort of time. But I'm going to try this quote. Let's see how this works.
Okay.
With her evocative hand embroideries, Kingdom creates handmade tales whose understated power causes us to pause and explore areas of tension in both individual and societal spheres. The pleasure of the material choices she makes is a counterpoint to the quiet pain of the subject matter, and the subsequent tension leaves you wanting more of this bittersweet performance. Where these stories will take us remains to be seen, but it is certain that this is a documentary that we should all be watching.
Wow. I don't know who wrote it, but I'm going to say,
I wrote it.
it is spot on. Now we are done with the podcast. That's it. All
Thanks
done.
very
That's
much,
what I
everybody.
do.
Good
Thank
night. God,
you.
that was bonkers. So the thing was, like, I remembered that, like, yeah, I wrote about you in 2018, and kind of then I went back and read the article, and I was like, God, I sounded very clever when I wrote that article or whatever. But it was just really nice. It was really nice to just kind of dig that back up and realize that we'd had a bit of a moment then when we did like done that article for Fiber Arts Now and everything like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's almost like I don't know where to begin with you, Michelle, because the thing about you is you always like, it's like you came from out of nowhere and just presented these worlds and these images, and every single one of them is a sort of like a piece of art that could make you cry. Even when you started, it was a bit like that. You were just like, whoa, what is Michelle presenting here, you know?
Thank you. I so appreciate that. I don't know where to start. I don't know what people know about me or want to know. But in my mind, part of what I do kind of has to do with wanting that small, tiny inner world that I can't put words to. That's basically what I'm trying to do in Stitches, is just make some sense of this crazy, beautiful, horrific life that we all have. And they're almost like little vignettes, little poems, and they're all just one enormous quilt in my brain. I'm not the kind of artist that's focused on, I am always trying to push myself and do different things, but I'm not trying to reinvent the needle. I'm always trying to be true to something that matters to me and hopefully matters to other people.
Yeah. It always feels to me just like you're a storyteller. Like with some people, I think there are some people that are made to do the things they're doing. And it reminds me of Audrey Montoya, who's a
Oh,
needle
yes.
felting artist. And her needle felting creations are just her doing her. And your
Yeah.
work is the same. Like you see your work and you know it's Michelle Kingdom. And it's always been like that. I don't think you've ever gone a fumbly. I mean, maybe you kept the fumbly ideas to yourself or something like that, but you've always just instantly come out with this style. This is you. Has it always been like that?
Yeah, well, so first, sorry if this is redundant for anybody who has heard a little bit about my backstory, but
No, we're
you
going
know,
for the
I
whole backstory. I want the whole backstory.
the whole backstory. I went to school for fine art. I went to UCLA, drawing and painting, very traditional. I grew up in a family that was hand sewers, not embroiderers, although they did that too. But textiles were everywhere. It was just part of life. Um, this was like 1990 when I graduated. I always loved making art, but I thought there's never any possible way that this could be a way to earn a living. But I was just doing it basically to go to college and keep exploring because I love learning all the time. So I was drawing and painting and feeling like, the art world had no place for somebody like me. Everything was big, everything was super ironic, very conceptual,
Mm,
very cold, and I like that stuff, but it
mm,
just didn't feel like something that came out of me naturally. So just on my own, I started stitching these strange little things, and I didn't show anybody for decades. So I
right.
think part of maybe why it seems like you can tell right away that it's my style, because it was like a weird, like stunted kind of growth that I was just able to do on my own, and nobody cared. No, I didn't show it to anybody for so long.
Mm,
um I wasn't listening to anybody's input. I was totally doing just what I want to do. And then by the time I really was getting more and more competent with stitching, I had ideas, I was ready to go. And then it didn't matter what other people would say, just because this was what I was doing. This is what felt right to me. I wasn't trying to earn my living from it. So it's always in this special place of, I'm still just making this because it's something I want to do. It's something I
mm,
have to do. It's not something where I'm depending on my living for this.
mm. Can you remember like in like the first few pieces that you would have done on the download when you didn't tell anybody? Can you describe them?
Yes, I remember them exactly, and actually, they're on probably my Instagram and on Flickr. I was actually out of college. My first job for 6 months, I taught art to developmentally disabled adults. It was a wonderful, very surreal job that I could not live on. The pay was awful, um, but we would sometimes get donations at the center, and I got a bag of silks. They were, and I still have them. They were maybe, I don't know, 5 inches by 8 inches, beautiful colored silks with little taped numbers on them. And for some reason, once I saw them, I just knew I basically had to stitch like a Polaroid of what was in my mind. It had to be dense, a very compressed, you know, tight little world. And I started stitching dreams that I had, actual nocturnal dreams, not just like,
Right.
visionary dreams.
Mm.
And then it slowly started getting taken over by, not the literal dreams that I was having and interpreting. But I mean, I can still remember every stitch of almost every piece because you
Wow.
spend so much time with these, as you know.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like a fleeting brushstroke.
Yeah, but it was very much. I mean, was there a moment when like the needle sank into the fabric and you were like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
suddenly you just connected if you like plugged a thing in or something?
Yes, although I would probably backtrack to even earlier. Like I said, just growing up stitching, and I used to make a lot of clothes. I don't anymore. I used to be involved in the world of fashion for work. I'm not anymore. But it's almost like when you see your writing and it kind of drives you crazy, and you're like, oh, that's my writing. It's awful. Like I'm so terrible at this, or it's deteriorating. It looks like doctor writing. There's like a certain way of stitching with a needle, and that's just you. That's an
Mm.
extension of you, and it's always your style, whether I'm stitching a straight seam on a jacket or if I'm stitching a narrative to tell a story. But I can remember even going back to shows here in Los Angeles back in like the 80s. We have LACMA, which is the LA County Museum of Art. They have a wonderful costume department. And I remember seeing some shows, and there'd just be beautiful textiles, whether it was actual garments or quilts, and just the feeling. And I'm a huge fan of art history, all art history. That
Mm-hmm.
gives me more inspiration than anything. But walking into rooms where there's textile work, I can't even describe the feeling with words, but it's something. It almost makes you salivate, but
Right.
every bit of you inside, and you're just like, my fingers know this, and I must do this.
Mm.
I love
Mm.
painting too, but there's something about stitching that's just almost like part of the DNA. And I don't know if many people that grew up in a sewing family feel the same. I don't know.
I think there probably is though, isn't there? Because it like could literally be in your DNA. I was talking with Flora, my oldest, the other day about how my dad's a language teacher. And so
Wow.
although I didn't study a lot of French, it comes quite comfortably to me. And I think
Yeah.
it's just that thing, isn't it? Whatever they practice becomes embedded in them, and therefore you're a part of them and it becomes embedded in you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember visiting my grandmother, and I can still see she was an amazing seamstress. She made all of her clothes. She had a sewing room. It was powder blue. It was behind her bedroom, and she had a mannequin dress form, and like bay windows. And, I thought, wow, when I grow up, I'm going to have one of these. So many things you think when you're grown up that, are completely out of reach now. But I can still see that room, and a little, in some ways, every bit of stitching, I'm still recalling those feelings.
Mm. So when did you decide that you were going to go and become an art student? Was that naturally occurring?
um, Probably I never really decided. I'm like somebody who kind of stumbles along and
Yeah.
finds my way, if I'm honest. But I always made art. I did come from, like I said, a sewing family, but also an art family. My mom went to UCLA for art. My grandfather was a advertising art guy, like for agencies back in the 50s and 60s. So drawing was all around, and we always had stuff available. It was always something that I was pretty good at, so I just enjoyed doing it. I did it in high school. I went to college, and I just started taking classes. They all luckily turned out to be things that counted as credits, like philosophy and history and all that stuff. And then finally was like, oh, I better declare a major. So I ended up just choosing art because I didn't know what else I would take. Actually at UCLA at the time there was something called World Arts and Cultures, because
Mm.
I loved archaeology and anthropology, and if I wasn't math phobic from an awful teacher in junior high school, I probably would have done that. But part of me thought too, where am I going to work? Am I going to be alone in a desert somewhere, brushing off sand, which is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what I'm doing anyways. I think I do have the temperament for it, but I thought, it'll be a lonely job, and the likelihood of me doing that is probably slim. So I'll just take art, and then we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, you're making me realize it now. In some ways, it's like you're brushing, like you just said, you're brushing off sand, but it's in the process of
Yeah.
making vignettes instead or something, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
funny. Did the college have much of an interest in textiles, or did that just get put to one side?
I would say it was pretty much put to one side. I was taking some different textile classes on my own, like at local fiber shops. Before I did stitching, I was doing some weaving. I was doing some dyeing. I was taking classes like Navajo spinning and dyeing. I mean, it's all really fun and interesting stuff. And we had ECOT vats. There was a wonderful fiber artist that I had one class with. But yeah, it was very limited, and it was more of just like, I'm just taking this for fun. And the fine art department was like, ooh, hubba lubba lubba lubba, fiber what,
Yeah, right.
whatever, make something really big so that I don't understand it, and then you're okay.
Yeah. And so you focus therefore on painting and illustration.
Drawing.
Right.
Drawing and painting. Drawing always first, and I would say even what I do today, when people are like, "You're painting with thread," I never think of it as painting with thread. I'm definitely drawing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you unpack that a bit?
Well, I mean, I guess there's lots of ways I see why people would say that, because I'm using tones much of the time. But just the process to me, for me, paint is wet and I'm mixing it in a different way. To me, stitching is like I'm using colored pencils. They're really slow, really slow. That's really what's happening. I'm filling in like a pencil drawing.
Yeah, I saw someone the other day who was doing like a realistic colored pencil drawing, and I was like, I can't quite fathom how you're doing it, because there's like 9 different colors and kind of blending in, and then the end result's astonishing. But it's like,
yeah,
and I can see where you're coming from with that in some ways, isn't it? Because it's quite deliberate,
and it's all line work. It's all a line, and it's all a straight line. It's always like, I guess we'll get more into maybe the nitty gritty of the actual stitching a bit later. But in general, I'm always having a tension with not wanting it to look static. So sometimes it looks messy and chaotic, and of course it is, but I'm trying to have it be true. And I'm also in some ways trying to work against the inherent straight line. So I'm trying to get curves, I'm trying to get motion on these tiny weird little figures so that it feels like it's not just, like I love a lot of my early pieces had a lot of like satin stitch, which I love, and it's completely beautiful. But I kind of stopped using it because they tended to have a very flat look, which is great for some things, but just for the pieces I was working on, it felt truer to really just have a free for all.
Yeah. So actually, back in the day, you would be more like coloring in with a felt pen, almost like or like a spray can or something,
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it's never like coloring. It's always like every stitch is very deliberate, and it's there. There's never, for some stitchers, I know they're like, this is very meditative, and I'm in the zone, and it's not like that for me. I love doing it, but it's not a meditative, relaxing. I'm like stabbing fabric thousands and thousands of times, wrestling with it every step along the way. Sometimes you love it, sometimes you hate it, but every stitch is a decision. Every single stitch is a decision.
Now, you said in the past that you do your sketches first and foremost, but the idea that you sketch is not a fully realized idea, because then you've got that negotiation with the thread.
Yes.
The tension that you just talk about there, is that where that comes in then? And how much,
Yeah.
how far does an idea drift based on your having to now stitch it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're lucky, you have an idea and it's like, wow, this idea is crystallized in just the concept. And then I'm just going to do the sketch, and then it's going to be stitched, and everything's going to go according to plan. But that almost never happens. I mean, I would say maybe you can count on one hand the number of pieces for me, and I've probably done hundreds now. That actually happens. Usually you get the bits of an idea. You're not exactly sure where it's going. You have like an overarching idea of what you want to do. You do the sketch, you get it going. It's basically like bones to me. And then I'm putting the flesh on it when I'm starting to stitch. And the most enjoyable part is actually the discovery along the way, because you're having a dialogue with yourself, and a lot of the conversations are very stupid, but whatever conversations you're having, you'll have these moments where all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it needs this, it's asking for this, and then it gets really fun. It's like a game or a puzzle, and it's like you're making a little life. Each one is a tiny life, and you're trying to honor it and bring it to fruition. Some of them maybe are more satisfying than others, but that's kind of the journey for each piece. And I've talked about this before too. I'm somebody that does one piece at a time. I
Mm.
really go deep in that piece, and then I'm out. When I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting because I was going to ask you that because I know that I knew that, but it's interesting because I've spoken to plenty of people who have simultaneous projects on the go, but
Yeah.
like I think there's such a pure stream of your creativity that I don't think you could deviate from it,
Yeah,
probably
I
if
mean,
you
I just feel
wanted to.
like it takes away, my energy, and I wanna really dive deep into it, even if it's like weird and bizarre. It's like I'm trying to just keep it like this little thing. I want it
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of be true to whatever I'm trying to make. A lot of the pieces are pretty small compared with some people are working very large. I'm not doing that. Each piece takes maybe up to a month, but I'm not. I'd rather be able to keep working on different things. I'm not interested in working on a piece for like a year.
Mm. Yeah. So what would you say was the average size of one of your pieces? Because I don't know that
Um,
photography gives that away much.
yeah. Which is actually one of the things that I love about social media is it has equalized tiny
Mm.
work,
Mm.
because the screen is the same. So,
Mm.
I can compete with a 4 by 4 inch piece with somebody who's got an installation, but earlier pieces were like 2 inches. Now maybe it's up to like 20 inches, 10
Right.
to 20 inches.
Mm. Which is interesting because I think I would have always assumed you just went larger just because of the amount that you pack into those spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it feels bigger just because they're all dense.
Mm.
I don't really do much line work solely. So that's where it takes a long time. It's just filling, 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 filling.
Mm. So yeah, so let's just go back then. So an idea comes to you from out of the ether, and then you put it down in sketch format, and that's quite a process, isn't it? To get it out
It
in the first
is.
place.
It is. I mean, sometimes, yes, the idea comes down and, you're like, oh, hooray, I have a starting point. But, more often than not, you kind of have to search for it. So I
Right.
keep a lot of sketches, a lot of quotes, just lots and lots, big piles of stuff that I've had for years. And whenever I finish a piece, I think a lot of artists can identify with this. You finish a piece, you're finally done, for that day, you're like, hooray, I'm done. I'm so happy. And then the next day you wake up and you're like,
Mm.
shit, now
Yes.
what am I going to do? Anyway, I mean, that's just how it goes, right? And then
Yeah.
every piece you kind of torture yourself. But I take out all of those like hundreds of tiny little fragments, start taking them out, looking to see, what's speaking to me at the moment,
Mm.
and kind of pull ideas together like a collage. Um, just based on those visual ideas, then I'll also pull in, what's happening, like, temperature taking culturally, what's happening, what feels true to me in the moment,
Mm.
and just playing with it. And yeah, it takes a couple days to kind of get all those ideas in motion and get just a basic line work sketch ready for a pattern.
And is that like because I've had this. I mean, I don't make anything much other than podcasts and a load of fuss, but where ideas kind of creep round the corner. But it sounds to me like you're saying that doesn't necessarily happen so much. Is
It
that
doesn't
because of a
necessarily.
singularity of focus?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it does happen. It has happened. Sometimes those are the most delightful pieces to work on because the idea just really speaks to you.
Mm.
A lot of that happened for me after 2016 with the elections here and
Hmm.
Trump and MAGAism and fighting against all of that. I mean, it's been really awful worldwide, all the things happening.
Well, thank
But
God
I
that's
will say,
over. I'm not going
yeah,
into
right.
politics.
We thought we'd be done, right? I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the
Yeah.
power structure in the world and what's happening right now. But
Shout out
um,
to Diana Waymar, Tiny Prick.
yes, and love her, and shout out really to all the artists you've had. They're all so wonderful, and I listen to all of them and really appreciate everybody's unique perspectives on things. Anyway, what was I saying about craziness in the world?
Yeah, just the strength of the ideas when they come through. How some
Oh yeah,
ideas pop
it
right
was
in.
so
Happy to meet
it was
you.
it was so easy to push against, basically like a dictator
Hmm.
to come up with ideas. It was really good fuel for artists.
Mm.
But then, you make enough pieces and you're like, I need to turn this in other ways and start looking at it in
Mm.
other ways too. I could go on forever, complaining about that, but I won't.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, like, to the I don't know, the man on the street, the person on the street, if they saw your work, it would
Yeah.
be interesting. I don't necessarily think they would automatically realize that you're talking about current affairs sometimes
Yes.
in the work, in the modern placement of it, because
Yes.
there's such an abstraction in the world that you're creating.
Yeah.
It's an interesting tool for process. I mean, does it help you process when you're doing it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I feel like it's a necessity. Before I was really making work consistently. When you love art and you're not making work, you feel awful about yourself. It's just a hole in you all the time.
Hmm.
When you're making work all the time, you feel like yourself. You feel
Mm.
like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So, that's really the feeling. As far as the symbols in my work, I love symbolism in art history and all the coded artwork. I want to walk the line between making work that is meaningful about real things, but not making it shout at you. And that's even
Mm.
part of choosing this medium. I want
Mm.
some subtlety and delicacy because really that's the world too. Nothing is really black and white. Everything has lots of different sides to look at. So, I'm trying to not like smack people over the head, but I can tell too who's really paying attention. Some people are lovely. I have to say, people have been so wonderful when they see my work usually. But somebody who might be seeing a piece that to me has a whole lot of backstory, and they're like, "Oh, it's just so cute," and I'm thinking, really, yeah. Like to me, they're all beautiful little poison pills. That's kind of what
Yeah,
I'm making. Like, so you won't notice what's in it because it looks kind of pretty. But
yeah,
really, like that girl in that figure, she's like carrying a machete.
yeah.
you know
That lady that looks like she's lying in the flowers, she
Yeah,
died.
she's dead. Yeah, she's dead, and those are moths around her body. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so good. And there's the real sort of classicism to it. This is where I get a bit out of my depth when it comes to these things. But there's a definite style. It's like there's a timelessness, but your stuff isn't modern.
Yes. I agree with that. Like I said, I love art history, and some of my endless greatest inspirations are Egyptian painting, medieval illuminated manuscripts, Persian miniatures, really all of art history. I do love it all.
Mm.
Um, for myself personally, to a lot of my very early work that was more personal, that dealt more with family, had a lot to do with, memory and loss, just the people that you lose and, the loss of the idea of home, which is childhood, and all the
Mm-hmm.
people that surrounded you. If you're fortunate enough to have been blessed with a happy childhood, as I was, the
Mm.
rest of your life is not going to be like that. You have
Mm.
this wonderful little childhood in your head that, you keep holding up and remembering, and it's a loss. So there's some tinge of nostalgia for me personally, but I
Mm.
think also culturally too. If I just look, even I can only speak for the U.S., though I think much of the world might relate to this. My parents were born in 1940 and 42. They grew up in the 50s and 60s. This really was sort of the heyday,
Mm.
right, of like the American dream, and clearly not for everyone. But as far as the idea, people paid a lot of taxes at that time. They had a lot of services at that time. People were able to have families, and it was still hard, but there were lots of things that it's kind of like we've been weathered. We've been
Mm.
weathered. We've seen a lot of truths exposed. Um, it was a great time of naivete.
It really
um,
was, yeah.
and I grew up in 1970s Los Angeles,
All
which was
right.
a wonderful and very twisted kind of reality to see.
Mm. Yeah, you've done well to remain with your feet somewhere near the ground. You've
Yeah.
done
I
quite well.
mean, it was definitely. We've been watching a lot of old movies
Mm-hmm.
lately, like from the '70s, and it really that's the stuff that you remember, the stuff that kind of made you, and like those films are insane. It
Mm.
really, like, times were so insane, like just the way women were treated, the violence, just the things that we thought we were going to accept all of our lives. A lot of stuff has changed for my daughter, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite surreal how much, like, because I'm the same, I guess. I was born in 75, and,
Yeah.
1980s American
Yeah.
media was a big impact on things, and you just, in
We
a
were so
way,
optimistic in the
yeah,
80s.
honestly, it could have been like cool as anything because we could like transform into a Walkman and that sort of thing. And there's no like, and then suddenly, and sometimes I still have this problem. I swear, sometimes I'm just like, why are some people so happy? Because I feel like we're in this like boiling frog situation. It's going to
Yes.
make me sound like a right grump, but we're in a
Yeah. No,
boiling
I
frog
agree.
situation, and there's a lot of people who haven't noticed that this really quite boiling at the moment. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why are they? Why am I so grumpy? Because I'm paying attention to the world around me. I'm just like, I'm such a grumpy asshole.
I know, and it's so out of control anyway.
It is.
But the 80s too, I feel like that's because I was born in 67.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably don't remember too much of the 70s, but 70s were also like really depressing. Like,
Right.
growing up, like, going down like Hollywood and Sunset Boulevard, driving like in our family car, there'd be like hookers on the street, like shouting out to my dad. We had, no seat belts,
Yeah.
no protection of any kind. People are like smoking in the car with the
I was going to
windows
say, just
rolled
have a
up.
cigarette when you're 9 or whatever, don't you?
There were like mass murderers, all over the place. Hillside Strangler. Like I still to this day, on the side of the highway, when you see like those orange bags, and I guess they're leaves. All of my childhood, I thought they were like bodies in there. Like, this
Yeah.
is like, you thought, oh wow, this is kind of the weird stuff I'm seeing on the news. I guess that's that.
Yeah. Maybe we're just in a different kind of weird now. I love that. I love that. In all the pieces that you've made, do you find that you've got recurring characters?
Yes, not all of them. But some of them are recurring. And every piece is kind of a dialogue with other pieces, with myself. Usually, the last piece that came before it, I'll kind of try to pivot a bit. But there are some recurring characters, and I mean, some, one of them has been sort of based on my mom and things like that.
Was that something you anticipated?
Um, I don't have any preconceived notion for any piece going forward. Every
Mm.
time it's like I'm taking, like I'm going to work. I know I'm going to work. I'm going to keep making stuff. Um, but I don't have an idea of like, I have this goal to create this kind of a piece. Um, if I have a feeling like I want to tackle something, that's just the next piece I'll tackle. But I don't have like a long-term idea. Like I said, it's kind of like, to me, it's all one enormous piece, right? Which is
Mm.
the artist. And I'm
Mm.
just turning out tiny little vignettes from that. They don't all live together. That would be really cool if one day they could all be together. They can't, but
Oh, that's interesting.
that's,
So why can't they all live together?
well, I would have to get all the people that have
Oh,
them
sorry, you
in
mean
their
the
personal
physical
property.
pieces. I thought you meant like
Physical
in your head.
pieces.
In your
No,
head they
in my
can't,
head.
unfortunately. There's a lot of apartheid in my head.
Right.
Really can't
They're all in my
qualify it.
head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of static in my head, Jamie. Really a lot of static and a lot of thread, and it's very tangled up, and it's a big hot mess.
But honestly, I'm
But no, I
fine.
just mean physically, that would be incredible. Like,
Mm.
every couple of years I've had a solo show, which has been wonderful. But most of the time, because the work takes so long to get enough pieces together, I kind of have to stop everything. It's nice to just be able to make a piece and just keep going. But then they fly off to other homes.
Mm. I was talking with Diane Mayer a couple of episodes back, and
Yeah,
she has recently reproduced some of her work, like some of her early work,
yeah.
because of wanting, I think, to be completist on a collection and that kind of thing. I get the feeling you can't do that. I don't feel like you can
Yeah.
recreate something.
So, there've been a few pieces that, some people have really loved and wanted like another version or commissions. I have done a few commissions in the past, and I'm not saying it's never possible, but usually I don't want to go back. Like I said, I'm making
Mm.
this, for whatever reason I'm have in my own head. Um, I'm not. I think it'll also take away from the person who has that original piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be like, well, now here's a knockoff that I'm doing of myself.
It's an NFT version of it now. You can
Right.
buy
Yeah.
100,000. What's the other thing? Oh, because when you were talking earlier, one thing it made me think of, and I hope this comes out right, but it's almost like tarot card readers sometimes,
Uh-huh.
you know, they're there in the moment presenting the information that is given to them at that point in time. And it almost
Yeah.
feels like your work is not dissimilar to that kind of principle, because you're very much just like, here's the thing I'm delivering right now. And that, like you say, you've got no preconceptions. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have, I mean, I don't know how much you reflect back on your work when a piece is done.
I reflect back on all of the work whenever I'm making work. Like I'm very aware of, if I've used this symbol before, or have I executed this dress in this way? Do I want to, I'm knowing what I'm doing. But, I'm not like, dwelling on like, oh gosh, that one piece, I really should have made it this way, or, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's part of the process. And I also, because I guess that's the thing as well, is your process has evolved over the years. And as you say, you've been able to capture things. I get echoes of like Kay Savalle, obviously with her super duper portraits and a similar
Yes.
build up of color like yours. But then also in some ways, Danielle, fiance Knowles, although
Yes.
she goes like Technicolor, but there are
Yes.
similar realms there, aren't there, in terms of like the figurative elements. And I wonder what you've learned along the way in that respect.
Well, I think, those other two artists are wonderful. They do very different work. They're both working very large, one very colorful, one so realistic and so great at capturing a likeness. I totally appreciate what they do. What I do is very different, but what we all have in common is the density of the stitches. Not all embroidery artists are doing that very, very dense buildup of work that people often describe as painting with thread, which that's where I understand where that's coming from. But yeah, I mean, just as far as, that process and how that might have evolved, like I said, I am trying to have a certain amount of fluidity into what I'm doing. I've also, usually I stitch with a 2-ply. Is my favorite, but a lot of times more and more with a 1-ply, which is insane, I know, and it's really bad for my eyes, and I'm getting older, and that's awful, but there's just something so delightfully fragile about it. It's almost like you're gasping as you're sewing it and hopefully seeing it. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's barely there. They're little ghosts. They're tiny little ghosts you're making, But as far as like the technical process, this goes back to, painting and drawing and like tones and line and form and all of those basic elements. They're always part of the mix. Everybody executes it in their own way. Everyone has their own style. I know I'm not trying to make mine have a likeness. I'm not trying to make them look like a painting at all. Usually in one piece, I'll try to add tones on one part and another part completely flat. I want to remind you, this is absolutely thread. If I wanted it to be a painting, I would use paint. I can use paint. I would use paint. This is thread. This is what I fell in love with. I loved watching quirky embroideries from, naive work maybe that came out of other countries or different artists that were doing things. That's what I loved about it. I'm not trying to make like, Leonardo, who I love, but I'm not trying to make that in thread. I'm just not.
It seems like the single strand thing is probably the evolution, isn't it? That's the point you get to, because I think, like with silk shading that the RSN would teach and that kind of thing, it is very much single strand, isn't it? Choose the color, place it well. Are you a slow stitcher?
I think I stitch pretty quickly, but I don't stitch every day. And I need the light. So usually I'm the kind of person that, I'll stitch all day. It's a good thing I'm not doing it every day, because my eyeballs would fall out and my hands would be frozen.
Just to the claw.
Yes, it would be fully that kind of a situation. So I think when I am working, it's fast. But I do have a full-time job, which maybe we'll talk about at the end, because I know you're going to ask what surprises people. That's probably the most surprising thing. So I'll save that for the end.
It's very true, people. Yeah. Who
so
would
I
have thought?
wish I don't even have the luxury of stitching every day, even if I wanted to.
Thanks for joining me on another Needle Exchange. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email hello@needle.exchange, that's NEEDL.exchange, with any thoughts, comments or feedback. And if you want to keep up with all the news, sign up to the NeedleXChange mailing list at bit.ly, bit.ly/NeedleXchange. See you next time.